Hello and welcome my friends to another Saturday morning arcade. I am Savino as always, and today we're talking about the game that, why not the first modern beat 'em up, laid the foundations for the genre and introduced mechanics that remain essential to this day. Today we will talk about one of the greatest arcade games ever, the one that made many of us fall in love with the genre. Today we will talk about Double Dragon. Released about 1 year later from Renegade, Double Dragon, developed by the same Technos Japan and published by Taito, is, in many ways, one of the most influential games ever. Sure, its influence was somewhat limited by time, since it wouldn't take long for the game to be surpassed in every single way. Double Dragon hit the arcades worldwide in 1987, April in the US and Japan, June in Europe, and it took the arcade goers by storm. And not without a good reason. In 1987 there was nothing like Double Dragon at the arcades. The game used the same board from Renegade, the Motorola 68000, but you wouldn't recognize it as the same hardware when comparing both games side by side. While Renegade was a breakthrough when it came to gameplay, it wasn't really a graphically demanding game. Double Dragon, on the other hand, brought some huge sprites, at least for the time, and improved the color palette, and most importantly, a vast and beautifully crafted, interconnected world. And there was yet another difference that made Double Dragon stand out even more. You could play with a friend at the same time. Yeah, it was amazing back then. People may find this weird, but I think Double Dragon is a masterclass in storytelling, and unfortunately no game outside the series, and even later games in the series, presented the story in such a compelling way as Double Dragon. The game doesn't have a single word or modern cutscenes to fill you in, but even so, from the first scene you understand everything about the world around you and your role in it. Let's check it out so we can refresh our memory. Man, this is so classic. So, right from the start, you know that a girl was kidnapped by a gang. You don't know who the girl is or what her name is, but you know, if there's a girl in danger in a video game, she can only be your girlfriend. And there's the gang from which you can tell a lot, especially if you're a kid with an active imagination and enough time to keep watching the demo mode in a loop. You can see some of the goons you face, some of which you only see if you reach a certain point in the game, and you can see Machine Gun Willie, who you would assume correctly is the gang's boss. I mean, he's taller than the others and carries a freaking machine gun, so of course he is the boss. Just after the girl's kidnapping, you can see your character coming out of a garage with a pretty cool car parked in it. So now you know who you are and how cool your character is. And they also like tea, as you can see by the English tea room here. I never understood this, and when I asked Ogata-san, the game's animator, he said it was Kishimoto-san's idea, but he didn't know the reason why he put it in a game. Curiously, this is basically the same approach Kishimoto-san used in Neketsu Koha Kunio-kun to tell the story, but in the game things were left more in the air, with a group of people assaulting a guy all wearing basically the same outfit. Without the proper context, the story here was a bit harder to infer, but in Double Dragon you had no doubts. To make things clearer for the player, as soon as you start moving, you will spot some wanted posters showing the faces of Willie and Roper. I don't know why they put Roper in the wanted poster, but I like to think that is because he's pretty noticeable in the intro, and you also will be fighting one of his variations on the spot, so you know these guys are a city problem and not a local gang of thugs that don't like you. As you play, you will see a broken city controlled by gangs, and they are everywhere, from factories to the city's outskirts, patrolling and beating anyone who dares to oppose them. As simple as the story can be in Double Dragon, it's very well told and won't waste your time with unnecessary cutscenes. It puts you right into the action and tells you the story along the way. Show, don't tell, as they say in cinema. Double Dragon also used the one-shot style when presenting the levels. Here, differently from Renegade, after beating the level boss, you won't be teleported to the next level. Here, all levels are just one big level with distinct sections that blend into the other. It's a pretty cool way to show the game's world as one cohesive place, and it worked pretty well here. It's a shame almost no one tried to mimic this after Double Dragon because it looks pretty cool. The only game outside the series that did this that comes to mind is Maximus 2, but there are a few others, I'm sure. The way the levels were structured was a huge difference from Renegade. Here, instead of fighting in tiny arenas where all enemies are visible all the time, Double Dragon used scrolling levels, hiding enemy and bosses from your view. Sure, this wasn't the first beat'em up to do this. Games like Karateka and Kung Fu Masters had scrolling levels, but it was the first with a Z-axis for you to move around. Some would say the devs bit off more than they could chew, as we will discuss in a bit, but one thing is for sure, Double Dragon was a sight to behold, even in a year when games were starting to look pretty good at the arcades. The characters are pretty detailed and the backgrounds, despite lacking depth, are well made and will be part of the actions with doors opening to present new enemies, ledges where you can go, and the legendary Abobo introduction, which, let's be real, is the most awesome intro a character can have. The game was gorgeous for the time, but that came with a huge cost for the players. The original Double Dragon is known for its terrible and frequent slowdowns. Renegade had its own share of slowdowns, but since Double Dragon was a more technically advanced game, it came at a cost. But to be honest, I only start seeing complaints about these slowdowns in modern days. Sure, back in the day there was no internet for us to share our lack of satisfaction about everything, but I was an arcade rat and I don't remember anyone blaming their failures on the game's frame rate. Most of us didn't even know what a frame rate was, but let's talk about something no one ever complained about: the soundtrack. Composed by Kazunaka Yamane, who was behind a lot of Technos tunes, Double Dragon soundtrack is one of the most iconic in the genre, if not in the whole video game industry. The theme song, which by now has more versions and remixes than you can possibly ask for, is probably one of the most recognizable in gaming, and if you're of a certain age, it's impossible for you not to know it. Even if you don't like the game, there's no way you can deny its greatness. The songs are that good throughout the whole game, from the classic City Street theme passing through the mysterious forest theme to the haunting and action-packed Willy's Palace theme. We can argue about the sample quality here, which would be stupid because sound had some pretty big limitations at the time, but there's no discussion about the composition quality. Compared to Renegade, Double Dragon was leaps and bounds when it comes to combat. To start with, you can play the game with a friend, a first in the genre that so far the only way to play with a friend was by waiting for them to lose a life and comparing high scores. The developers wanted to show this from the start with the game demo showing both Billy and Jimmy getting out of their garage. Your moveset was basically the same as Renegade, but with some difference. You now could hit your enemies with a powerful headbutt and you can attack enemies behind you with your elbow, which is a pretty powerful and kind of a game-breaking move. Differently from Renegade, where you could hit enemies in front and behind you, both your main attacks will only hit enemies in front of you. I'm not sure why Kishimoto-san changed that, but I believe the fact that most enemies come from your right is one of the reasons for that. And sure, since the game was now suited for 2 simultaneous players, you didn't need to watch your back the whole time. The Renegade style would later return in Double Dragon 2, but it was the last time the system was used by Technos. Another nice change here that I don't see many people talking about is that now your flying kick can be unleashed by just jumping and hitting attack, while in Renegade you had to run to get some traction before being able to use it. I mean, it's more realistic, but realism does not always translate to good gameplay. Talking about running, this is an ability that was removed from Double Dragon. You can also no longer sit on your victim's chest and punch their faces into a messy pool of blood. What a shame. Double Dragon also introduced weapons for the player to pick up. In Renegade, a lot of your enemies are carrying weapons, but they never drop them. So you could only count on your fists and feet to defeat your enemies. Now you have baseball bats, barrels, knives, rocks, boxes and whips. I mean, it was a huge leap. Actually, there are games being released nowadays that lack the variety of weapons a game from 1987 offered. Come on guys, where's the creativity? The AI was also improved here. Enemies are way smarter than in Renegade and will not simply follow you around when you move. They have more strategies and they can understand when you're carrying a weapon and act accordingly. You can see them stopping in their tracks when you attack the air and they will go out of their way to grab a weapon lying on the floor. Enemies know how to surround you and they will take any opportunity to counter your attacks if you miss a single hit or think too much before pressing that attack button. Yeah, I know you can easily exploit the AI directing them to traps and pits, but at the time this was pretty impressive and in some ways it still is. It's hard to say Double Dragon was a turning point for the genre because the genre wasn't well established at the time, but we can surely say that for a spiritual successor, Double Dragon more than surpassed Renegade in every single aspect, including popularity. The game was ported to everything under the sun, including the Atari 2600. Most of these ports were more or less faithful to the original, aside from the NES released 1 year later, which added some small RPG elements which later would be the foundation of River City Ransom. Sure, Double Dragon wasn't perfect or even fair. The game inherited some wonky hitboxes from its predecessor, and seeing your character taking hits mid-combo isn't a rare occurrence. The slowdowns also don't help, since it can miss registering some of your inputs with some not so good consequences. Some of the enemies like the Abobo family can easily end your life if they trap you in a corner, and this bit on Willy's Palace is straight up cheap. I mean, screw these walls and these demons with lances. Double Dragon is without any doubt a very influential game. It laid out the foundations of the genre as we know it today and gave birth to a new and exciting, although short-lived, era at the arcades. The era of beat-em-ups was just 2 years ahead, and developers around the globe were eating Double Dragon to try to top this juggernaut. Spoilers, they did. If you never played the original Double Dragon, you were missing a crucial part of the genre's history, so I invite you to play it today. You can grab it on all consoles you can imagine. It's on Steam, GOG, you can emulate it, play it on your phone for some reason. I mean, there are plenty of ways to learn firsthand more about the story of this fantastic genre. And that's it for today's video. If you got this far, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you can have more beaten up things in your life. I hope you guys enjoyed this look at this classic game, and if you missed my previous video about Renegade, check it out. There is also plenty of information in that video for you to enjoy. I will be back next week, this time with a nice list of beaten ups for you to enjoy, and don't miss this show on April 19th when we will see what happens when you bring guns, wars and prisoners to a beaten up. But until there, I hope you all have an awesome week, and remember, keep arcades alive.